I think Dr. Machar was trapped. As soon as he got to Juba, he was trapped from the very beginning, was not allowed to travel. And then they found a perfect time to put him in, which has always been the plan. And now this political court, first of all, the decision to investigate and then to arrest people for the incident in Nasser is a political decision, okay? Because there have been many other incidents in the country, and there are still many incidents in the country today. And they are not investigated, and nobody is prosecuted for it. It is only this one incident. That decision to investigate this particular incident is a political decision. It has nothing to do with justice. And therefore, the indictment itself is a politically motivated indictment.
Thank you, Abraham, for coming back again to the show. I really appreciate you coming back. I know you're busy, so we'll go right into it. So I want to begin by asking something that I've always been thinking about, and many people may be asking this. What is PCCA, People's Coalition for Civil Action? Where did it begin, and what exactly does it mean?
Right. Thank you very much, Brother Quir, for inviting me back. And greetings to all the listeners around the world who are interested in the affairs of South Sudan. My greetings to them. Regarding the question about PCCA, its origins, and what it does, I'll be happy to share. PCCA originated from July 30th, 2021, when a number of people we were for signed what we called a declaration. And PCCA was inspired by two things. It was just the end of the national dialogue, and the final report of the national dialogue was submitted to the president in April 2021, and the report was shelved. And the second part of it was that it was the 10th anniversary of the independence of South Sudan, that July. And so a number of us in civil society, we have been meeting to review what the first decade has been in the lives of ordinary South Sudanese. And we try to project also what the next decade would look like. And based on that analysis, we concluded that if the next decade is going to look like the previous decade, it means that the foundation of South Sudan is going to be really weak, and that the nation might collapse or disintegrate. And so, based on what we heard from the people of South Sudan during the national dialogue at the grassroots, people were yearning really for change. They are sick and tired of insecurity. They don't even want to have guns in their hands. They said these guns are dangerous, they kill us. So if somebody could take them, please take them. And they are sick and tired of ethnic conflict. They want it ended. They want the government to work. And they want peace, they want justice. And they want development. These were their expressions and frustrations that their own leaders have failed them. So based on that analysis, based on the fact that the national dialogue took 4 years and a deeper involvement of the people of South Sudan, and they were able to speak, and now their voices were being dismissed, we concluded that we cannot let this just slide. We have to respond to this. And that was the basis of the declaration. So the declaration basically narrated what the country has been for 10 years. What was envisioned and what was delivered were not commensurate. They were not matching. And what the people of South Sudan were expressing and what the leaders want us to believe were also not matching. The bigger narrative that the main problem is that there is ethnic animosity, we did not find that in the national dialogue. More particularly, we did not find that between the Nuer and the Dinkas. They both claim that they have no war between them, that the whole thing is political. They have no animosity and they have no basis for animosity. In fact, in Upper Nile, they cited that their last war between the Dinka and the Nuer was in 1940. And that would be considered a legitimate ethnic war. And it was over natural resources, it was over water and grazing rights. So they characterize it as that is the ethnic war they have fought, and the last one they fought was in the 1940s. Everything else that has happened after that is politically motivated, and it has nothing to do with them.
So just to
Go ahead.
clarify,
Yeah,
so the declaration was a response to the government's inability or refusal to act on the national dialogue.
exactly. It was a response to the fact that the government pretty much shelved the resolutions of the national dialogue. That was one. It was also a review of 10 years since independence, what we have achieved and the trajectory that we were following. And we then conclude that the people of South Sudan don't matter anymore in public policy. If their voices could be dismissed after 4 years of talking in a manner that was sanctioned by the government and financed by the government, and in the end, their views and opinions were dismissed, this is something that we could not take. And so that is what the declaration was. It was basically a call for the people of South Sudan to stand against the fact that our affairs are now handled by one man. He decides with a stroke of a pen to disqualify the voices of thousands of people. So that is the PCC. So we basically made that declaration and we organized ourselves and said we're going to call ourselves People's Coalition for Civic Action. And the reason we emphasize coalition is that we are working across ethnicities and across administrative boundaries. And we emphasize civic because whatever agitation we're going to make was going to be civil, was going to be a civil discourse, was not going to be violent. And so we describe ourselves in the PCCA as pro-democracy, non-violent civil rights movement. That's how we describe ourselves. So I'm still a member. I'm a co-founder of PCCA. I'm a signatory to that declaration, and I continue to promote those ideas.
So when you released the declaration, was it named PCCA or was it something that came subsequent to the declaration?
Well, the declaration was made by the PCCA,
Okay.
the People's Coalition for Civil Action.
Okay.
So that was the group that was now making the declaration.
That's okay. That makes it clear. Now, if someone was to, because this is something some people may say, if someone was to characterize this as some sort of a political party, that would be a mischaracterization of PCCA.
Yeah, we are. Our ideals are broader than a political party. Okay. Because a political party would be interested to pursue power, and it would pursue change by seeing themselves as the only alternative. But the PCCA does more than that. We want change, but we are not pursuing change with the sole objective of taking power. We are seeking change for the purposes of bringing about better lives for the people of South Sudan.
It's nonpartisan.
It is nonpartisan.
Oh, okay. So thank you for explaining, because sometimes we hear these formations, but people don't get to know why they are formed and what they entail. and the principles under which they were formed. So thank you for explaining that. For people who didn't know, now they know. And if they have questions, they can contact PCCA.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thank you. Now coming to the object of today's conversation, I want to begin by asking you about the appointment of President Salva Kiir's daughter, Adut Salva Kiir. And her appointment has raised a lot of controversy. Some people see it as just, it's not unusual, because many leaders in the world have appointed the family members as long as they're qualified. So I want to ask, before I ask anything else, what comes to mind? What comes to your mind when you heard about her appointment?
Well, I can say that uh, for purposes of honesty, I think that President Kiir had done well to try to keep his family away from the government for a very long time. Try to keep, although they have been active in the market, especially Adut, they have been away from the government. Even the first lady is not really politically active at all. Her office, the concern for women and children, clearly deals with issues of women and children. So she's not a political actor, even though we hear rumors once in a while that she supports one person or the other to be appointed, but she has not really spoken out politically. The same thing is true for President Kiir's children. They have not been deeply involved politically until when Thiek was appointed in 2020 or 2019. I think it was 2020, yes, to become deputy executive director in the office of president. That position also is not political; is a technical position. I don't know what you do as a deputy executive director, but I know the executive director in the executive office of the president is simply to manage the office and to run the affairs, administrative and otherwise, in the office of president. The minister in the office of president then is a political figurehead. So I'm putting that to context to make a point, which is that Adut's appointment as a senior special envoy for special programs in the office of president is a significant appointment. First of all, she has no political experience. And so to promote him as an advisor, and the position of an advisor in government is senior to a minister. Advisors, they sit above the ministers. I think that is unwarranted. There is no reason to do that. She could have been maybe given another type of assignment, and then she can work her way up into the political hierarchy. Because once she's done being an advisor, a position that is senior to a minister, what else is she going to do? She cannot be appointed again as a deputy minister because that would be above that. Maybe she could be appointed a minister. That would still be a junior position, but it would be a little bit better than being a deputy or being somebody junior than that. So I'm not a fan of promoting young people to the highest positions because it deprives them of being given other opportunities down the road. But being appointed as the daughter of President Kiir is problematic. A dude as a South Sudanese young person deserves to be appointed like anyone else. But as a daughter of President Kiir, the optics don't look very good. And it came at a certain time when a lot of dynamics are happening both within the party and also within the government. Rumors of secession debate are happening, and then she is brought into the middle of that. And not only was she brought in the middle of it, she's taking over a position that was previously held by Benjamin Bol Mel. And there have been two issues surrounding that relationship between Adut and Bol Mel. One is positive. There were reports of them having a relationship. Uh, at a personal level, which I'm not willing to talk about. But then there was, after Bol was appointed, there were swirling rumors that she was unhappy with Bol Mel at the same time. So for her to be brought in that position just raised so many questions. And I normally don't comment on the appointments because I know that those appointments really don't mean much because they don't alter the power configuration. So, for example, many people got excited that Adut has come and now she is going to fix all these problems. Of course, she's not going to fix all the problems. The problems are deep seated and they are related to her father holding power. And she's not going to sway her father one way or the other to do things right.
So, is the main problem that she's a young person who is inexperienced and then elevated that higher position? Or is the main problem that she's the president's relative? What if she was qualified and she had other senior positions and then appointed? Would that mitigate the problem or concerns we have?
Well, I think that you cannot escape the accusation of nepotism here. Just to be frank and straightforward, uh, there is nothing that warrants that she should be appointed to this position as the daughter of the president. Her appointment will always be seen as an nepotistic appointment. So that is the problem. That is one problem that I have. She's a South Sudanese. She deserves to be appointed in any position, but being the daughter of President Salva Kiir sort of limits her in what she can be while her father is still president. And being appointed a minister or being appointed a presidential advisor or any other senior constitutional post would definitely be seen as a nepotistic appointment. So that is one angle where I'm concerned. That is the political angle. It doesn't look good politically. It doesn't project an image of a family that respect the people of South Sudan and that holds the power on behalf of the people. There are so many South Sudanese who deserve to be in that position. And for one family to have somebody who is the president and the first lady by virtue of being the wife of the president, and then having another senior constitutional post in a government that has very limited number of advisors, would appear to be a little bit too much. And you also have a number of others running security agencies surrounding the president. I know that there is one son of the president in charge of a special unit of the national security responsible for the protection of the president. It goes to create an image of a family trying to take hold of the country. And that is my concern with that. The secondary, which is is not a major issue, but it is a question of justification for the appointment. If there was such a special skill that Adut has, and the country needs it, and she gets that appointment, you could say it can be justified. But she has no prior experience in government. and then she is elevated to a position that is so high. It was appropriate that Thiek was appointed as a deputy executive director as a way of saying, come here and learn how this government runs. Nobody made noise at that time. People were saying, okay, that makes sense. He needs to hear, he needs to learn something. But such a senior appointment without prior experience uh, suggest nepotism and suggest and is of course they trigger rumors of the president maybe grooming his own daughter to become president.
What?
And I'm not surprised if there are people who are thinking that way.
Because that's
And
what.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's what many people think. Because people assume that Bol Mel came through the same avenue. He was also in the same office, and then now Adut all of a sudden is here. Now, when you were in Juba and you had access to people in power, what was exactly the function of that office? Because no one actually cared about this until Adud was appointed. We knew Bonamel was in that office, but what exactly does that office do? Because Adud tried to explain in one of his speeches, but I don't think she made way. What exactly was that office, from what you recollect?
Actually, the office uh, uh, on the administrative side, that office was headed by uh, an I mean, a director general, and and it used to be called, director general for special programs. So, for example, that office is the one that manages the Freedom Hall on behalf of the government. And so, if there is a government function being organized, it is that office that manages that. They are the ones that have the budget line to manage that. They are the ones that uh, coordinate with other branches of government to make sure that the function, which might require the attendance of president, is organized in a manner that is consistent with the protocols. So that is what I knew. But to elevate it to a level of an advisor or a cabinet level, I didn't think it was necessary. I thought it was not even necessary to have a director general in charge of that. A director could easily do that. But it is very much, it was initially about somebody managing events. For example, if somebody is visiting another head of state, there are protocol units, there are others, but there are people who organize things like banquets and other related matters for the president and for the office of the president. So there is a need for an office like that, but it is not a political office. It is a programmatic office, and therefore does not need an advisor, which is a political. This is a political position, and I can tell you that there are only 3 or 4 advisors in the government. This is how rare this thing is. Right now we have um, Gerald Kwalmanyang, who is the advisor, a senior political advisor, and then we have an advisor for national security, and then you have a dude. That's it. That's very much. We don't have we don't have advisors in the government because the peace agreement limit the number of advisors, because they said if the president get more than 3 advisors, then they can then if any additional advisor would have to be shared according to the power sharing ratios. And so so it is a very limited privilege, and that is why I didn't think it is needed. Maybe you could say a political envoy to regional something something, but a special program, I think it's a misnomer. They need to find another name for that office. So that
Look,
is what I know about that special program office.
it looks like the vagueness of the office itself is where the power is. Because if it is not well defined, then it can be changed into whatever the powers that be want it to be, and that is very risky
Exactly.
too. and that's very risky. But then again, it looks like it has become an element of power play. So people see it as an office through which people come close to the president. Now, do you think the appointment of Adut sort of tampers with the position of Bol Mel as not just as a vice president, because it looks like being vice president doesn't really mean much. The power was within that office, and the fact that this office has been removed from him, it makes it appear like he's just going to be like other vice presidents. The power is gone.
Well, again, like we dealt with this issue in the previous episode. The way President Kiir plays his cards is such that there are always competing elements for his attention, and so he would appoint somebody, give him power, but appoint somebody else to compete for his attention in almost the same configuration. So so the appointment of a dude, if I'm looking at it as a political analyst, is to tell Bol Mel that don't go too fast. I have an alternative. And don't grow your horns too long. I have an alternative. So it is an attempt to temper his ambitions and slow him down. But he still keeps him. He has a purpose for him, and I think his purpose is still on. But at the start, it looked like he was on a rocket to propel himself too fast, and that became a concern. Of course, President Kiir did not appoint him as a replacement. He appointed him to do business for him, and so Adut's appointment. I think there are three things that Adut's appointment serves. One is to counter balance the fact that he actually prepared the country for this. He appointed General Qual's daughter, and then appointed General Awed's daughter, and then brought in Waneiga's son. And so it is to say that this is something that the senior political leaders of SPLM are doing. So my child is in the same rank as those other kids. But since I'm the president, she can be elevated higher. That is one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is to say he had a lot of opposition within his own family and his own community and kitchen cabinet who are concerned about how fast Bol Mel was rising in power. And so they were pushing him really hard. And this is what led to the arrest of General Akut Lual. He was one of those people who was opposed to that. And so in order to cater for that constituency, he brought his daughter to say, okay, your own person, the one that you like, is now here in the office. So shut up and follow. So that is one way to look at it. And then the third way, of course, is what I have already stated, is to bring Adut as a check on Bol Mel so that he doesn't go too crazy and get drunk on power, because there is an alternative. And he has always done it that way. There is always an alternative for President Kiir in his power configuration.
There's something that came up when we were talking in the previous episode, and someone also brought it up on Facebook after I talked to Riek Machar. So according to Agil, is there sort of a cabal around the president who is led by Bol Mel, who have controlled whatever the president does, and the president has no access to how people feel about everything, including Bol Mel. So he was saying even if someone tells the president that Bol Mel is the most popular man in South Sudan, he's going to believe it. So it gave us that impression that the president is basically helpless. So the appointment of Adut was seen as a response to that. Now, when we spoke, you talked about president being the only man and everyone else is utilized. It's just basically a tool for his own amusement in political terms. How can we reconcile these two? Do we see the president as almost helpless? And then, if that's the case, then all these decisions are not being made by him. Either the Bol Mel is making them, or Adut has come in to sort of see that the father is being controlled, so she wants to help also to influence decision making. That means the president actually isn't making any decision. How can we
Well,
make sense of this too?
well, one thing I can say is that when you are a distance away from President Kiir, you take him for a fool. Somebody who doesn't really have his own convictions and his own desires, and he does what others tell him. And that is a very false narrative, and he wants to project that. He wants to project that image that he is a helpless leader who has been captured and is taken for a ride by some elements. That is a false narrative of President Kiir is family in charge. He is in control. And by the way, all these people that are said to be controlling him, it started with Paul Malong or Tilar, or even those of Deng Alor were considered to have controlled him, but they have always found themselves outside the palace. But the problem persists. And so Bol Mel is just a pawn here. He really doesn't hold power. He has power because it has been granted to him. It's like a Kolkor. He had power which was granted to him. So if those things don't teach anyone a lesson, that President Kiir actually is in charge of the country and he is the decision maker, that person doesn't really understand how power works. Because of all those people, if they control him, they could have taken over from him. If they see him as a fool, they would simply say, well, why don't we just take it for ourselves then? Yeah, so I don't buy that narrative at all. I worked closely with the president for 4 years during the South Sudan National Dialogue, and I understand how he operates. And he has access to more than the information that any one of us has about what is happening in the country. He has ears all over the place. He listened to the National Dialogue deliberations. He watches SSBC. And he understands what is happening. He's privy to any information in the country. But then he makes his choices and he makes his decisions. And so that narrative is false narrative that the president is being manipulated. Yes, there are people around the president. There are always people around somebody. But when it comes down to a decision making, a leader will always say, this is what I want to be done, and that is how it goes. I have heard people saying, oh, even some decrees are written that the president is not aware and all of that. I have heard those things. But they are not that true. It is a strategy to build that image of innocence, of creating a mess, projecting an image of innocence, being somebody trying his best to fix things, but there are people who are failing him. I don't buy that narrative a bit, and I have no respect for anyone who buys that type of narrative. President Kiir is in charge. He appoints, he relieves. Even this saga of war not ending, it is his decision not to end it. Yeah, so I disagree with Comrade Agil on that front. It is also an effort that people who are buying for power around the president that they make. They try to project the other group as the villain, the people who are failing the president, and now they have an agenda to change things around. I know the group of people who came up, who changed those over Kolokor and others. They proudly say we got rid of them and now we have taken over. But a year later, or I don't know how long it has been, nothing has changed. Because there is only one variable that does not change in South Sudan, and that is President Kiir. All other variables change. And so I'm convinced of that, and I can debate anyone who tried to say it is otherwise.
So that brings me to the indictment of Dr. Riek Machar. And many people are saying the same thing, that it isn't the president who is after this. It was Bol Mel when he was appointed, then he went after Dr. Riek Machar for whatever reason. Now, in terms of the political implications, because we don't really know why they did this, because many regional leaders who tried to meet Dr. Riek Machar, they were told that the government did not actually make the connection between Dr. Riek Machar and the White Army. In fact, he was trying to talk to them so that they don't, they don't attack the general who was killed. So now they are trying to do this. So what do you think is the political implication of this, or do you think taking him to court as they are doing now tomorrow is the right way to do, or is this just a political fuss, a legal fuss?
Well, yeah, this is an interesting case, Dr. Garang. The the arrest and detention of Dr. Riek and now his indictment is a politically calculated initiative, and Bolmer really has no power to undermine first vice president against the will of President Kiir. President Kiir would have come to the camera and say, I have nothing to do with this, and whoever has done it, I have cancelled it. Sometimes I don't even know why people don't take time to think about those little formulas. The whole situation in Nasser was provoked in our own eyes, and it happened when Johnson Olony was integrated into the SSPDF and then given the assignment to disarm, to be in charge of disarmament across the country. And he was assigned to go and do disarmament starting in Upper Nile. And he was sent to the field together with CDR, James Kong, who is a deputy CDF. So both of them were deputy CDFs, and they were sent to go and deal with disarmament in Upper Nile. And they went and held meetings in Malakal and all of that, and Johnson Olony spoke about now mobilizing the forces to go and do disarmament. And then later on, the government loaded barges with military equipment and soldiers and sent them toward Nasser. So the whole idea for the White Army, and of course for the IO, was now an existential threat. They're going to be disarmed by the Sholo militias of Agwelek, as well as a unit of SSPDF called Abuchok. Abuchok is, of course, by the Sholo and the Nuer. They consider Abuchok as a Dinka militia of Upper Dang in Upper Nile. And these were the forces that were going to be taken there to disarm them. So this is what triggered this. Now, when the barges were sent and they were not able to arrive in Nasser because the river was shallow, they came back, having already provoked the situation. And instead of sending these soldiers on foot to go and reinforce their comrades who were in Nasser, they went back to Malakal, having seen the situation is already heightened. And so for the White Army and of course for the SPLMIO, they saw an opportunity before they get disarmed, they should dislodge these forces. I don't think it was a good idea. I think it was a violation of the peace agreement, but they did it anyway. And that led to the atrocities that were committed in Nasser, including the killing of David Majur, and of course the inhumane method with which people were killed and their bodies were mutilated. So that was a very bad situation. And then suddenly, now tables were turned, and they said now it is Riek Machar who triggered that situation in Nasser, and the whole SPLMIO was arrested. You have to be a fool to not believe that this was planned. And then this was also, not only was it done, it was preceded by the invitation of Ugandan forces to come to Juba and provide extra protection, because they knew that if Riek was going to be arrested, it was going to create a backlash. So it is something that was orchestrated. It was designed to deliver these results.
To what end? Because they know that this can trigger ethnic violence. Now, you've talked about how the president operate. He uses people like CDR, so they will send CDR and say, oh, he's a Nuer. They're not going to say it's tribalism. But they know, as you say, South Sudanese are not fools. They see through things. So now when you send people to go and disarm them and do not communicate so that they know this is not just an ethnic issue, but they perceive this through ethnic lens, if you bring Agwelek and then you have Abu Shok, and they see this with a unit of SSPDF as just an ethnic army trying to come and attack another ethnic group. Why don't they see that, or they see that and they don't care?
Well, let us see. We have different objectives here. President Kiir, his objective is longevity in power. And he has found a formula that would do that. And violence is the formula. Each time you create a peace agreement, when the pressure from the international community increases so much, and if you are running out of resources, you bring peace. But when that peace is about to end, to usher in now a permanent transition to peace and democracy, you create a scenario where that peace breaks down, and so that you don't run out of opposition, because violence must be perpetuated by a formidable opposition, and Riek is that opposition. So as long as Riek is around, that violence can always be summoned by doing something to him. And so his goal is different from our goal. My goal is to have peace and security and democratic transition and economic development. That goes contrary to President Kiir's plan. His plan is, how do I stay longer in power? How do I delay elections? How do I delay scrutiny of the international community? How do I delay a formidable opposition that could mount real opposition in an environment of free and fair democracy? And so this thing was done particularly to stall or to forestall the possibility of organizing those elections in 2026, which the international community, they just, that is a red line for them, that this transition must be finished. We have to go to the finishing line. We have to hold elections. We have to have a constitutional process. Now, what you have described is right. So the procedures that were followed were all outside the peace agreement. First, if you want to do disarmament, the government of national unity needs to sit, and the presidency starts that process and agree that we are doing a comprehensive disarmament. Then it goes to the cabinet, which will then debate how do we go about this? Where do we get the resources to achieve this disarmament process? And then it goes to the security organs. And now you know that there are different armies. So you need the agreement between the SPLM-IO and government to do disarmament. That whole thing was bypassed. And even the deployment of government forces, the government claims that they wanted to redeploy those forces who have been long in Nasser. That redeployment was actually a violation of peace agreement because the agreement says that you cannot move forces without an agreement. And there is a peace implementation monitoring mechanism called CITESOM, a ceasefire and security transitional arrangement mechanism. So they are the people that monitor violation of ceasefire. If you are going to do something like that, you first meet in RJMAC, which is the body that manages the peace agreement, and then it goes to CITESOM to help facilitate that process without necessarily leading to a violation of the ceasefire. All those things were overlooked, and these activities were done outside that peace agreement. Because if you did them through a peace agreement, the IO were going to say, no, we should not do that. Let us do this. Let us do this. And the plan, which is to put Dr. Riek and his group in trouble to achieve an outcome of a return to war, to achieve an outcome of delayment of elections, and to achieve the ultimate objective of longevity in power, it had to be done outside the provisions of the peace agreement. And so to me, it was not an accident what happened in Nasser. It was all planned. And even General David Major could have been saved. You know, the man actually fought and defended himself for 5 days. And there was no reinforcement. The army doesn't work like that. There has to be always a reinforcement, and then you get defeated. You cannot say, oh, you know, we send gunships. There is no, you cannot send a reinforcement on air. You have to have ground troops to go and do the rescue mission. No attempt was made. And then people resort to the UN and then resort to Machar himself as a trap to tell him that you are the one that should facilitate this. And the man tried to resolve the issue, which was out of his hand. And so in the end, despite his attempts, the whole thing failed because that's how it was designed. And now he is the criminal. He's the one who initiated it. And so to me, the indictment of Dr. Machar is a bad thing for the country. It's a dark part of our history. I know there are so many innocent South Sudanese who have suffered so much, and they can blame the leadership of Dr. Riek Machar for that. And they want him to face justice. I also want him to face justice. But it cannot be done in this way. It will not help the country. The country actually is the bitterness is being deepened. The gaps, the divides are being widened. And this is deliberate. And it is, and so I definitely don't agree with the indictment. I think Dr. Machar was trapped. As soon as he got to Juba, he was trapped from the very beginning, was not allowed to travel. And then they found a perfect time to put him in, which has always been the plan. And now this political court, first of all, the decision to investigate and then to arrest people for the incident in Nasser is a political decision, okay? Because there have been many other incidents in the country, and there are still many incidents in the country today. And they are not investigated, and nobody is prosecuted for it. It is only this one incident. That decision to investigate this particular incident is a political decision. It has nothing to do with justice. And therefore, the indictment itself is a politically motivated indictment. And that is not to deny that there was something that happened in Nasser and terrible things happened, and we all watch, but is to say that the whole thing was politically motivated, including the incident in Nasser was politically motivated.
Because what happened in Nasser as a response after the attack on Nasser and the killing of General Majur. Someone has to pay for it. There's no question about that. Someone has to pay. But as you explained, the way this was carried out is very suspicious and it's also ill-informed, given the context in which they are going to the courts now. They have to prove it, and we know what happened in 2014 when they tried to make the case for the coup attempt. So when I talked to Dr. Isaac Gang recently, one of the things he said is the request by the people in Nasser was, we want disarmament, yes, but we want an integrated unit. So go back and bring an integrated unit and then we'll respond appropriately. That's what they were told. But they were not interested. They came with this force of Abu Shok and Agwalek, and that's what they were trying to force to complete the disarmament. And the people said, no, that's not what we want. And instead of responding to the needs of the people as a state, as a government, they just forced what they wanted. Now, and the other thing that I don't understand is when the whole town was overrun by the White Army, they chased away the SSPDF forces.
Yeah.
Now, General Majur withstood with his bodyguards for nearly a week. Now, if the White Army could chase away SSPDF force, were they unable to overrun the general with his bodyguards? That's something that I didn't quite understand, and no one is
Right.
going
Well,
to.
the general and the bodyguard, they locked themselves into
Attack.
what do you call it? Armored
Attack.
vehicle,
Mhm.
which the White Army were not able to burn, and they had weapons in there. So if they get close to the armored vehicle, they get shot. So it was a risk for them, and so they were left there, knowing that they have nowhere to go anyway. So we just stay there for a while until they run out of bullets, probably. So that is my understanding of what happened. Why he was stuck there for several days. He was able to lock himself uh, into the armored vehicle, and they were dangerous, of course. And so the White Army said, okay, so they're going to need to eat, they're going to need to drink water, and they are going to need to get out of here. So let them stay in their vehicle, but if they get out, we get them, instead of trying to force ourselves into it, because they were trapped anyway, and the wheels were kind of deflated, so they could not go anywhere.
Okay, so
But yeah, so you are right. Definitely, there is a need for justice for what happened, um, but it has to be one that is not in conflict with the national interests of peace and unity. And I think that if you prosecute the whole organization that signed an agreement with you, it doesn't seem to be justice. It seems to be like you're pursuing political end, uh, because you could not have arrested the entire leadership of SPLMIO, and then you now kind of make a deal with some junior officials to try to take over, and you don't allow the SPLMIO to do its own internal process. So I think that is what has clouded this indictment as a political process. I made a comment in another place that the right time to have arrested and taken Dr. Riek Machar to court was 2016, when the fighting took place in and around the State House. The whole world would have said that was an attempted coup, yes. So, because there was an attack in the State House and the president was there. And so, why didn't we arrest him at that time? And why was he protected by the president and given an armored vehicle to take him home? Only later now to send some people to go and shoot him. That's why I believe that there is it is a project.
And
It is a political project.
Riek Machar has become some sort of shibboleth, some sort of an ideal that people are using for whatever project, I don't know, because he has become an object of hatred, rightly or wrongly, and people want to get rid of him, even if they do things that are counterproductive to the needs of the people, things that are illegal, but they're trying to force this to make sure they get rid of him. But what is the cost of doing this? At the disintegration, the people within the Nuer community were talking about the Nuer nation. They want to secede. The same thing with the movement within Equatoria. They want to secede. Now they know all these things. And now there's this claim and interest within the SPLMIO faction that want to work together with NAS to sort of work against the government. That is a movement that is going on. Now, do they think all these things do not count because they have UPDF? Or they have the power to think about to the point where they don't really care about the consequences of all these decisions?
Yeah, so the whole that is why I stated earlier that we are operating on different levels here. The ordinary people of South Sudan, you and I and others, we are looking for peace. We are looking for transition out of conflict. We are looking for stability. We are looking for a democratic transition so that our people can be home and enjoy the fruits of their country. President Kiir, on the other hand, has a different vision altogether, and this is what has dogged the whole country for so long. He wants to stay in power, but to do what with that power? We have not seen so far. The man has been trying for 20 years now, exactly 20 years, since 2005 when he took over from John Garang. We have given him his space, but he has proven unable to pull the country together, or even a word of mouth to console people. For example, in this type of crisis, for example, the arrest of Dr. Riek Machar is something that requires the president to say something about publicly, to tell the nation why he's doing this, why his government is prosecuting Dr. Riek Machar, and what that does to the unity of the people of South Sudan. He's not talking. He's not consoling anybody. People are confused. But he's out. He's nowhere to be found. Yet he wants power. What does he really want to do with power? And for how long does he want to have this power? So he has reduced his entire tenure in office. And especially right now, before South Sudan independence, he was a nationalist, he was looking for a solution to get South Sudan to become an independent country. But since 2013, a political process also that was orchestrated with the results that were intended to produce what we have now, he has simply reduced his time in office to how can he stay long, but not what can he do to the people of South Sudan. He gets all these reports. For example, the recent report about the UN human rights about corruption. That is a big thing. The president should say something about it, but he is silent. Yeah, suggesting that he's aware of it, but he doesn't want to deal with that because it goes against his plan to stay long in power. So I think all these analysis that you and I do, and all these problems that we foresee will follow this decision is exactly what they want. They want chaos, they want disunity, they want conflict, they want disharmony, because that now creates another environment. Look at the scenario. Okay, the court may go and say, okay, Dr. Riek Machar, we found you not guilty. Now, where does he start? He goes back and say, okay, now I'm back as first vice president. But then he has a group of people up in the bush fighting for him. So now it would have to be another political negotiation, and that will give another transitional period. And when I spoke in 2021, I said these guys They will drag this agreement on until 2030. Nobody believed me. But I think it is becoming a little bit more real if you look at it right now.
That's
So
true.
so so the objectives we need to bring to our we need to console ourselves with the reality that President Kiir is pursuing completely different objective from the rest of us. And that is important. Once we have accepted that he is pursuing a different objective, we will start asking these questions why he is doing what he is doing. We will need then to say, how do we get ourselves to decide for our country? And that is the reason why PCCA actually came out, is to, and that is why I talk, that's why I'm talking to you, is to tell the people of South Sudan that we have a fundamental problem. Our leadership has contrary objectives from our own. And we tried to reconcile this through the national dialogue, which were then rejected because they lean more toward what we want and undermine what the leadership wants. And that is what did it for me. That's what did it for me. And so I have a clarity of mind that we are not on the same page with President Kiir. He's pursuing something completely contrary to our ideals and to our aspirations.
So thank you. We actually, that's the thing with when we talk, they become so interesting. The conversations become interesting that we can go on and on.
Oh
I
yeah.
want I want to ask you to conclude with something that worries me, and many people don't seem to pay attention. South Sudan is an ethnically diverse country, and people are divided along ethnic lines. And when things like this happen, the fault lines, just fall into place. Now, people will say, oh, this is not an ethnic issue. It is not a tribal issue. It's a political decision. So it doesn't really matter if the 8 people who are indicted are from one ethnic group and the people who are actually indicting them are from one ethnic group that holds power. They say it doesn't count. But the optics, as you said, they count. The perception people are not always rational when it comes to ethnic issues. They just react with the emotions. Now, to indict these people with Dr. Riek Machar, and they're all from one ethnic group, and to say it is not going to divide people, it's really strange. How can we make the case so that people understand what you're trying to say, that President Kiir operates on his own wavelength? His interest is power in itself, to maintain power and his longevity. But for the rest of us, we need peace, we need development, we need to send our kids to school when they are safe. That's all South Sudanese want. But that's not other people see. They still think the president is doing great. How can we make the case so that the people themselves see themselves as one, and then this cabal of the hold around the president who are only interested in power are seen as one group, not with us?
Right. I think that is an important question. And I made this clear when I spoke to the people in the Lake State media. I said that this prosecution is a disaster for South Sudan because you arrest the entire leadership of SPLAIO, which is predominantly Nuer, and you think that that is not a problem. You have to be sick, and you really have to be drunk with ethnic uh, bias to not see. And I gave an example. I said, suppose in 2005, when Dr. John Garang went with nearly 100 senior SPLA leaders to Khartoum and touched Khartoum at the airport, and he was welcome. And then suppose he did not die in a helicopter crash, which could have been orchestrated, but he was arrested by Khartoum and charged with something. And I gave an example. I said in 2009, there was a serious clash between the SPLA and SAF. in Malakal. It was such a serious fight. I said, suppose, and President Kiir was in Khartoum. Suppose the government in Khartoum arrests President Kiir and said he is the one who ordered the troops in Malakal to fight. Irrespective of what kind of justification the Jalaba were going to make, we were not going to accept it. We were just going to see it as a political prosecution and a violation of the CPA. And we would have actually fought instantly. We were not going to wait. And this situation is similar. Riek Machar fought with President Kiir and he signed an agreement and he came to Juba to implement an agreement. And he has a whole section of South Sudanese society that follow him as a leader. And then you arrest him, charge him, and indict him. And you think that you are just pursuing justice and therefore nobody should complain about it. That is being politically immature. This move is actually very dangerous for the country. And I think the best thing that could be done, and that is my advice, is for President Kiir to ask his inexperienced Minister of Justice to withdraw the case. And I also said that the reason Justin Madolarol was removed as the Minister of Justice is the most experienced legal mind of the SPLA. But he didn't want to pursue this case. And so he was removed. And then another person was appointed who was totally inexperienced also. But he is experienced politically, Riek Machar, because he has not practiced law for a long time. And then he was appointed Minister of Justice, and he used his political sense to say, this thing cannot be prosecuted. And he was removed, and then a small boy was brought, totally inexperienced, just a graduate. And of course, I'm not going to accuse him of not having gone to law school. That is not my place. But he has never practiced any law. And now he's the prosecutor to come and carry out this. I think it is injustice to him, and also it is injustice to the country. So the best course of action is for the president to withdraw the case and go back to the peace agreement and try to implement the peace agreement. And also, this is something I had pointed out previously, there is a mechanism for justice in the peace agreement itself. And that is, the government needs to establish the hybrid court of South Sudan to now come and prosecute these cases. And if you think that Riek Machar has committed some war crimes and crimes against humanity and murder and all of that, bring it to the hybrid court. Because at least with the hybrid court, the African Union and South Sudan will appoint the judges. And so there will be some credibility, international and regional credibility for that court. And so that nobody is going to be accused of having prosecuted his own political opponent. So if you are really truly standing for justice and you want to really pursue justice for David Majur, do it through the hybrid court of South Sudan. Bring this evidence that you have to the hybrid court and let them prosecute the case. And not only just this incident, but the whole period of civil war justice needs to be done. That is the only justice that will make sense. Anything else outside that will be seen as a political prosecution. And somebody could say rhetorically that, well, if you commit a crime, your ethnicity doesn't matter. Well, these are not people being picked up on the street, who broke into a bank or stole somebody's property. These are political leaders. They have political weight, they have support, and they happen to be from one ethnic community, and Unfortunately, our country is organized along ethnic lines because we have no advanced and developed ideology. How else does a society organize itself? We don't have ideas around which we can organize. You and I can do that. But the majority of our population, they express themselves now in the form of their kin and kith. This is a natural phenomenon, and it is not something that we can dismiss. This is the reality right now. Until we mature politically, and until people can organize around ideas, we are going to be organized ethnically for now. And so you don't tamper with that. You don't dismiss it. It is at the core of what holds that country together. The moment you tampers with that, you are basically disintegrating the country, and you're not going to have a good life. And that is my advice.
So thank you very much for being here again. And I think we'll have to pose it to them to sort of know that the only solution to these problems is sitting together with Dr. Riek Machar, however much they hate him. Because one of the problems is that they've personalized a political problem. So in a political system, you can hate someone personally, but still work with them for the interest of the people. So I think as much as they don't like this, they have to sit together with Riek Machar. And I agree with you. They must withdraw this because at the end of the day, they will not provide an evidence unless they just have a kangaroo court where there's just manufactured evidence. So thank you for being here again. We'll talk again on these issues. And people always want you to come back because they like
No,
you.
thank you. Thank you. And I definitely thank you for the opportunity to speak on these issues, and for the listeners who want to hear from me. It is a privilege. I don't have a special knowledge on these issues. I just happen to have operated in an environment where I'm privy to some information. But it is definitely a privilege to talk about these issues, and I look forward to having more conversations.
Thank you.